Welcome to the 2012 FIA World Rally Championship End of Season Review. It's been a breathtaking year. Join us for the next 30 minutes as we take a look back over all 13 rounds of this year's championship. The start of 2012 saw a number of changes across the WRC. After 6 years as a factory driver at Ford, Mikko Hirvonen joined Sebastian Loeb at Citroën.
Now when this opportunity came, I thought, that for sure I want to see how it goes. And I think I needed to change as well.
While over at Ford, Jari-Matti Latvala took over the role of team number 1. And after 11 years, the Blue Oval welcomed back former driver Petter Solberg.
It was where I started my whole career, and maybe was one of the reasons why I got a world champion is because of, I had the chance with Malcolm in '99.
Other drivers this year include Dani Sordo with the Pro Drive Run Mini WRC team. Mads Osberg returns for the Adapter World Rally team. Also in M-Sport prepared Fiestas are Evgeny Novikov and Oyt Tanak. The Citroën Junior team are back with WRC debutant Thierry Neuville. Nasser Al-Attiyah represents the Qatar World Rally team, while Armindo Araujo and Paulo Nobre started the year for the WRC Team Mini Portugal. Making a welcome return back to the calendar, Rally Monte Carlo kicks off the 2012 championship before we head to the snow and ice of Sweden. Mexico, Portugal, Argentina, Greece and New Zealand take us up to the halfway point. The fast-flowing forest roads of Finland kick off the final 6 rounds, followed by the first tarmac event of the year in Germany. Rally Wales no longer the season finale. Instead, France, Italy and Spain close out this year's championship. Straight into the action and the jewel in the WRC crown. Back after a 3-year absence, Monte Carlo is where it all began. Jari-Matti Latvala was the man who took the early lead. The Finn held a 30-second advantage over Sebastian Loeb, but after showing astonishing pace early on, a patch of ice just before the apex of a fast right-hander caught him out and brought his Rally Monte Carlo to an early end. Meanwhile, Mikko Hirvonen made a steady start to his year on his Citroën debut, bringing the DS3 home for 4th. While in a Pro Drive prepared Mini, Dani Sordo was having a good start to the year, embroiled in a battle for 2nd with Petter Solberg, and despite this early scare on the snow, he managed to hold off the Norwegian for the runner-up spots by the end of the weekend. But up at the front, it was Sebastian Loeb who led from Sordo. First blood to the Citroën team, and astonishingly, win number 6 in Monte Carlo for Seb.
28 points.
Loeb's final winning margin nearly 3 minutes back to Sordo with Solberg 3rd. Russia's Evgeny Novikov finished an impressive 5th, with WRC veteran Francois Delacour closing out the top 6. With Citroën dominating round 1, it was up to Ford to bounce back on the snow and ice of Sweden for round 2. With an all-Scandinavian driver lineup, the Blue Oval have dominated on Swedish snow for the last 6 years, and we're looking to continue this trend.
I think car is really good at the moment, and we really hope I could push and try to be there fighting for the podium places.
Straight into the action then, and Sebastian Loeb made a subdued start in Sweden. He blew his chances of victory when he buried his DS3 into a snowbank, finishing his weekend a disappointing 6th overall. Latvala had built up a lead of 30 seconds over Mikko Hirvonen going into the final day, and he would need it. The Ford driver clouted a huge rock in the middle of the stage, ripping through his Michelin snow tyre. 25 seconds were lost to Hirvonen in the process. The gap was down to 8.4. Meanwhile, the fight was on for 3rd between Petter Solberg and Mads Osberg. Unbelievably, Solberg hit the same rock as his teammate Latvala. His right front Michelin tyre deflated instantly, and with it, his chances of 3rd place. Up at the front, though, Ford and Latvala hung on to respond valiantly to Loeb's dominant Monte Carlo display, marking Jari-Matti's 2nd career victory on Swedish snow.
A warm welcome.
So there's confirmation that Latvala celebrated his first victory of the year over Hirvonen from Mads Osberg in 3rd, Solberg down in 4th, followed by Novikov, while Sebastian Loeb was a distant 6th. Round 3 in Mexico, set high up in the mountains, proved to be a test of stamina and complete concentration. Searing heat, rough rocky roads and altitude, this was to be the toughest of the year so far. It was the Citroens of Loeb and Hirvonen who were fighting for the lead. At the end of the second leg, it was Seb in command, 36 seconds ahead of his teammate. Meanwhile, Evgeny Novikov's Fiesta had filled with dust after the roof vent had been ripped off. Unable to see properly, the inevitable eventually happened, and his rally came to a spectacular end.
You're okay? Yeah, we have to go outside as quick as possible. Right.
Moments later, Jari-Matti Latvala went off in exactly the same place, and he was forced to retire, leaving his teammate Petter Solberg as top factory Ford finisher in third. Up at the front, it was the Citroens who once again tamed the mountains of Mexico. Loeb took the win, and Citroën were rewarded their first 1-2 finish of 2012.
I enjoyed this rally. It's never easy to win here for me. It's always some good battles. Finally, we are here with 1 and 2, so that's a very good result for Citroën and for the team, so I'm really happy for that.
So Loeb's final winning margin in Mexico was 42.4 seconds ahead of Mikko Hirvonen. Petter Solberg finished third ahead of Osberg and Tanak. Citroën's Nasser Al-Attiyah closed out the top 6. On to round 4 then, and the stunning Algarve was the setting for the Vodafone Rally to Portugal. The drama began immediately in Thursday's night stages, a rare mistake from Sebastian Loeb, and the world champion was out. Treacherous conditions greeted the drivers on day 2, and Latvala was once again down on his luck. He slid off the road and retired. The Finn was able to continue under the Rally 2 rules, but he had to settle for 13th overall in Portugal. Petter Solberg was the next big name to make a mistake, and what was a dream start to the weekend for Ford became a nightmare. Mikko Hirvonen was dominating at the front and went on to win the rally, but was later excluded for clutch and turbo irregularities. All of this meant that it was Norway's Mads Osberg who took the win in Portugal, his first ever WRC victory. A fantastic drive from the Norwegian in conditions so difficult they caught out the factory team drivers and caused stages to be cancelled. No work Citroens to be seen on the leaderboard. Mads Osberg was declared the winner in Portugal, with Evgeny Novikov in the runner-up spot. Petter Solberg eventually recovered to take third. So after the first 4 rounds, Sebastian Loeb led the championship, but the pressure was on the Frenchman. Petter Solberg's consistency early on was paying off. The Norwegian was just 4 points behind. Meanwhile, in the manufacturer standings, the non-scorer in Portugal left Citroën just 12 points ahead of long-time rivals Ford. The 2012 title fight had got off to a scintillating start. The championship was still anyone's guess. Join us after the break for all the action. Welcome back to the 2012 WRC end-of-season review. It was the Philips Rally Argentina, where the rugged, desolate landscape provided the perfect backdrop for round 5 of the World Rally Championship. 3 accidents in the first 4 rallies was not how Jari-Matti Latvala wanted to start his year. And to add insult to injury, a skiing accident put him out for Rally Argentina. Replacing him was Danny Sordo, released from his mini-team for the event. Into the action then, and the first high-flying casualty of the weekend was Petter Solberg. Despite a 20-second rally lead, the Norwegian continued to attack, and a huge impact with some hidden bedrock broke the steering arm on his Fiesta. Petter was in trouble, and he plummeted down the leaderboard, leaving Danny Sordo flying the Ford flag in third. The battle for the lead, meanwhile, was between the Citroens of Sebastian Loeb and Mikko Hirvonen. Just 2.4 seconds separated them, and with both drivers pushing each other to the absolute limit, something had to give. The team stepped in and orders were called. Sebastian would lead the Citroën 1-2 home. With the top spots decided, Danny Sordo was on course for a fine third place. But in a cruel twist of fate, just metres from the finish line of the final stage, the alternator on his Fiesta cried enough, leaving Mads Osberg to capitalise and take third position. Up at the front, it was Sebastian Loeb who made it win number 7 in Argentina and his 70th career victory. Loeb eventually finished 15.2 seconds ahead of Hirvonen, with Osberg once again making it into the top 3, and Martin Prokop took his best finish of the year in 4th. And so, on to round 6. Beautiful as it is, Greece has been widely renowned as the roughest rally on the calendar. It's a test of both man and machine. 2012 was no different. Ford were taking the battle back to Citroën. Seconds separated Latvala and Loeb. It was quite simply a game of who would make the first mistake. Latvala's luck ran out first. On stage 14, the Finn nudged a bank, picked up a puncture, and his fight for the win was over. The world champion passed him and picked up a healthy lead in the process. Petter Solberg picked up Ford's mantle and began to punch in fastest stage times to try and reel in Loeb for the win. It was going well, and the Norwegian was closing the gap until a momentary lack of concentration on stage 18, and he was off the road and out of the rally. The Ford seemed to be the faster car in Greece, but with 2 offs, Citroën went on to claim another 1-2 victory, with Sebastian Loeb once again taking the top spot. Latvala recovered some points for third, with that man, Mads Osberg, closing out the top 4. The Brother Rally New Zealand represented round 7 of the championship, and deep in the country's midwinter meant changeable conditions. Tyre choice was to be a key factor. Citroën's Mikko Hirvonen was first on the road and had opted for soft compound tyres. It proved to be the best combination. The Finn took the early lead. Meanwhile, Petter Solberg opted for the hard compound tyre, but on the damp roads, it was the wrong choice.
Petter looks already calm in there, but there's a huge amount of time loss.
Oh, yeah. Well, I know the look.
Despite the Ford boys setting the pace in shakedown and qualifying, it was once again the factory Citroëns battling for the top spot. Mikko, excelling in the damp, muddy conditions, pulled out a small advantage, but the tactical mastery of Sebastian Loeb saw him preserve his tyres over the course of the afternoon, and one final push on the last stage of the day saw him take the rally lead. For Latvala, who was running in third, this bizarre off on stage 7 resulted in the car getting stuck in a fence, and he lost 4 minutes in the recovery. Oyt Tanak was another man on the ragged edge, but he overstepped the mark on stage 20. The result was this high-speed off and the end of his rally. While Petter Solberg took his 4th podium of the year for third, it was the Loeb-Hirvonen partnership at Citroën which once again proved unbeatable. Sebastian leading home the French manufacturer for their 3rd successive 1-2 of the year. Loeb's final winning margin in New Zealand, 29.6 seconds over Hirvonen. Meanwhile, it was a career best for Thierry Neuville in 4th, with Latvala recovering to 7th. So at the halfway point of the season, it was Loeb who led, 38 points ahead of Hirvonen. Petter Solberg was third, a further 17 behind. Mads Osberg lay 4th, with Jari-Matti Latvala in a disappointing 6th. Citroën were running away with the manufacturer's title, a full 93 points ahead of the Ford team, leaving the Blue Oval with some considerable work to do in the second half of the season. And it was Finland that welcomed part 2 of the 2012 season in. The Grand Prix on gravel never disappoints. It's the one they all want to win, and all eyes were on the local boys. Latvala and Hirvonen, the former teammates, would go head-to-head on home soil. But it wasn't the locals setting the early pace. That honour went to Sebastian Loeb. The Frenchman was fastest out of the blocks and took the early lead. Finland takes no prisoners, and WRC Academy driver Fredrik Arlin was the first to discover that fact with this terrifying roll on stage 3. Latvala Latvala may well have still been on the road, but could not match the pace of the Citroens. The best he could manage was third at the end of the weekend. Meanwhile, Ken Block was another who learnt the hard way when a heavy landing ripped the suspension off his Fiesta, and he would go no further. Up at the front, Mikko Hirvonen couldn't give his home fans the result they wanted. Once again, he played second fiddle to Sebastian Loeb. The world champion had been supreme all weekend. On a rally traditionally dominated by the Scandinavians, Loeb made it win number 73 of his career.
It's always really special to win Finland because it's an incredible rally, very fast. The Finnish drivers are nearly unbeatable, but I've done it a few times now, so it's for sure it's great to win here.
So Seb pipped Mikko by just 6.1 seconds, with Latvala and Solberg closing out the top 4. It was another good showing from privateer Mads Osberg, once again in the top 5. And so to the first seal surface event of the year. It was a chance for the Finns to bounce back, but taking on Loeb on tarmac is a perilous task. Petter Solberg is the only other man to beat Sebastian on the black stuff since 2003. Despite showing incredible turns of speed and maturity throughout the year, the first man to feel the sting of the German roads was Evgeny Novikov.
Right zero shot and left zero shot.
The impact damaged his right rear suspension, and he left his mechanics with some serious work to do overnight. It was not much better for Petter Solberg. He lasted longer than Novikov, but learnt, not for the first time in his WRC career, that the tank-stopping Hinkelsteins also stop rally cars. Petter's challenge was over. At least Solberg's car was repairable in Germany. Martin Prokop's Fiesta suffered a much more fiery fate. Flailing rubber from a puncture eventually ignited and engulfed his car. Fortunately, both Martin and co-driver were well clear of any danger. With Solberg no longer in the running, Jari-Matti Latvala took the fight to Citroen once again. The Finn was flying on tarmac and demoted Mikko Hirvonen to third, but he quite simply couldn't match the pace of the tarmac master. For the 9th time, Sebastian Loeb flew towards victory in Germany and took 3 extra points for the power stage win. He'd done the double again, and the rewards tasted sweet. Such was the dominance of Loeb, his winning margin 2 minutes over Jari-Matti Latvala, while former WRC star Chris Atkinson took 5th, driving for Mini Team Portugal. With an unprecedented 74th win, Loeb was now on an incredible 199 points, 54 ahead of his teammate Mikko Hirvonen. He was now the only man able to stop Seb taking the driver's title. Citroen were also looking unstoppable at the top of the manufacturer's leaderboard. The Ford team were now 123 points behind. After the break, we'll bring you all the action from the final 4 rounds of the championship, where Sebastian Loeb's fortunes take an unexpected turn for the worse. See you in a few moments.
Hello, I'm Petter Solberg. Cruise I Rally Cameroon. Yeah.
Round 10 of the World Rally Championship brought the teams and drivers to Wales Rally GB. This was Solberg territory. The Norwegian had previously dominated on these roads 4 times, and he was out to make it 5. His campaign began well. Petter stormed into an early lead ahead of his teammates. The Ford boys were back on the pace. Eventually, though, Latvala took the advantage from Solberg and pinned his name at the top of the timesheets. The Finn was flying, still desperately seeking the win that had eluded him since round 2 in Sweden. Further back, the battle was raging for 6th place between Evgeny Novikov and Oyt Tanak. Sadly for the Estonian, suspension failure sealed his fate, and he was out. Up at the business end, Sebastian Loeb had passed Solberg for 2nd position, and it looked like no one could hold him back. Except, however, for Jari-Matti Latvala. The Finn ended his 7 winless rally drought and slammed a factory Ford back on the top step of the podium. His final winning margin over Loeb, 27.8 seconds, with Solberg just 0.9 of a second further back in third. Meanwhile, Mads Osberg outpaced Hirvonen for fourth. As the teams and drivers arrived in the Alsace for Rallye de France, after a decade in the sport, Sebastian Loeb had something to say.
I want to change. I want to try something different. For sure, I'm still in the fight for the title again this year, and I think I'm not too old and I'm still competitive, but on another way. If I want to find a new challenge or something different, it's also important to do it before you are too old to be competitive.
While the rally world was digesting the news that Loeb's full-time WRC career would come to a close at the end of 2012, there was still a rally and still a championship to be won. Loeb could do both on home soil in the Alsace. He stepped up to the mark and took the early rally lead. After his win on Wales Rally GB, Latvala had a renewed confidence in himself and in his car. It showed the Finn was taking the fight to Loeb, while Mikko Hirvonen could only hang on for third. Not so lucky for Petter Solberg in perhaps the most extravagant off of the year. Petter went off the road on stage 9 and got lost in the vineyards before finally felling an electricity pole. Up at the front, all eyes were on the son of Citroën and the son of the Alsace. Loeb took the rally victory and confirmed his 9th Drivers' Championship.
Sebastian Loeb, it probably doesn't get any more special. 9 times World Rally Champion and in your home ground again.
Yes, it's incredible. A rally victory championship again, so it's really incredible. All these people is wonderful.
What a weekend it had been for Sebastian Loeb, announcing his retirement, claiming the rally win and his 9th driver's title, all on home soil in front of his adoring fans. There it is, confirmation that Seb took an unassailable lead on the rest of the WRC field in France. 9 in a row, a record unlikely ever to be beaten. And it was a double celebration for Citroën. The team wrapped up the manufacturer's title for the 5th consecutive year in the Alsace. Both championships may well have been decided, but no one was easing off. Rally Italia Sardinia was to be the most bruising of the year. No one saw it coming, but 2012 world champion Sebastian Loeb was the first name on the retirement list. He was soon followed by Thierry Neuville. The Belgian hurt his hand as a result of this roll, and his weekend was over. Latvala beached his Fiesta on a concrete post while Solberg broke his suspension, which left one factory car in the running, and it was Mikko Hirvonen who claimed the top spot. Sardinia marked Mikko's first victory in Citroën colours and confirmed his position as runner-up in the Drivers' Championship. A great result too for Evgeny Novikov, while Oyt Tanak took his first ever WRC podium in third. So to the final round, the RACC Rally d'Espagne, and the fight was on for third in the championship. Petter Solberg ruled himself out of the running early on. Both he and Neuville hit the same pothole, retiring them both on stage 2. That left Mads Osberg fighting with Jari-Matti Latvala. Osberg took the early lead, but began to struggle on the tarmac roads on day 2. This spin cost him over a minute, and he had to settle for 4th at the end of the weekend. Meanwhile, Latvala, who had by now confirmed his move from Ford to Volkswagen for 2013, was battling with Sebastian Loeb for the lead. Despite a last-minute surge to close the gap, he couldn't overcome the Citroën star for victory, but the runner-up spot in Spain was enough to secure 3rd place in the Drivers' Championship. Up at the front, Sebastian Loeb bowed gracefully out of a full-time WRC career with win number 76. Sebastian took the win by 7 seconds from Latvala with Mikko Hirvonen a distant third. A stunning 6th place for Craig Breen in the SWRC car secured the Super 2000 class honours. Loeb ended 2012 with 9 wins from a possible 13. He finished his year on 270 points, with Hirvonen, Latvala, Osberg, Solberg and Novikov rounding out the top 6. The manufacturer's title race ended with Citroën 144 points clear of Ford, with the M Sport team 3rd and Adapter in 4th. The futures never looked brighter. VW and Hyundai are back. As we say, Sebastian Loeb, 2012 World Rally Champion. Until next year, it's goodbye.